guest, our speaker today, to talk about accelerating cloud in uncertain times. And I think everyone realizes that we are living in a new normal. And I like to say we're living in the new digital normal. And, I think one of the key aspects of digital is cloud. And being able to move and pivot and scale all at the same time. And I think our speaker today, David Olivencia, who, by the way, if you think about the term OG, he is the OG of HITEC. He is one of our original founders in HITEC and has been on this journey with us since day one. And I think, I attribute probably the first person that I connected with on HITEC and really convinced me to be part of not just the organization, but as part of the leadership team here is David Olivencia. And so I have a lot of gratitude and a lot of just a tremendous amount of respect for David. He's obviously not only an IT leader that happens to be Latino, that happens to be Hispanic, but he's a business leader, and he's one that has delivered significant outcomes to every organization that he's been in, all global organizations from with NTT to Ford, to Oracle, to Verizon, to SoftTech, and now as the managing director, leading the journey to cloud for Accenture's health and public service organization. He's sought after by not only us here at HITEC, but many in terms of speaking engagements. His message, his ability to articulate and get right after the points of what we need to do, how we need to do it, and why we need to do things. And I think in these uncertain times, we don't know what's next, but I think hopefully David will help us uncover that. He's also a distinguished and has a great amount or lots of accolades around education, which I know he's very passionate about. He himself has an undergrad electrical engineering degree from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, and he made sure that we all know it's the #1 undergraduate engineering program in the US by US News and World Report. And if you ever watch his posts, if you ever find him on Facebook, you will know that he is a diehard Irish Notre Dame fan. So he will make sure that you know that loud and clear. And he's also he also has a completed corporate governance program at Harvard and a certificate of education from NACD. So with that, David Olivencia, thanks for being here. More than ever, thanks for being a founder, a leader in HITEC, and thanks for being a great friend.
Oh, no, thank you, Guillermo. Thank you for that, the kind introduction there. And I have the HITEC background around me, but if you take that down, you'll see a bunch of Notre Dame stuff there as well. But no, thank you, Guillermo. It's been a heck of a journey. I'm honored to be a co-founder, but watching, your career and so many careers of people along the way as part of HITEC Grow, it's just been an amazing journey. And with Omar and team, we're just kind of getting warmed up with a phenomenal job that everyone's doing as part of that. And really, when you look at this series and this time, kudos to making this happen and really helping our members, accelerate their leadership. So, and I was going through some of the people who were on, and it's just so great to see the faces of so many, wonderful and dear friends throughout the years that are on. And there's a couple new faces out there. So thanks for making it a priority and jumping on to hear me from a check-in perspective. For those who don't know me, all my family is from Puerto Rico. Grew up in the Indiana suburbs of Chicago, and have lived in a lot of different places. But back here over the last 3 years. My wife's family is also from Colombia, and we'll see here in a couple of weeks. We're trying to make the summer trip down there, so we'll see if we make it down to Medellin, Colombia, where my wife's family is from. I also wanted to. I saw Jose Guerra on the line. He's also, as Guillermo puts it, an OG, one of the co-founders. So I wanted to give a shout out to my dear friend Jose Guerra, who's on. So one of the things I wanted to do was really, for the next 30 minutes or so, to kind of highlight 3 things, right? This area of cloud and how it's accelerating and how we need to lead. As HITEC leaders, we need to lead our companies and our clients, depending on where you're at, through this journey. I want to talk about 4 or so major technologies that are happening over the next 5 or 6 years that are really driving and accelerating cloud. And to the Wayne Gretzky's of the world, it's like, he doesn't shoot to where the puck is at, or go to where the puck is at. He goes to where it's going. And then the third area I want to touch on is just really leading, and my thoughts or principles around leadership in these uncertain times, and then open it up for questions if that's okay. So let's see. Okay. So if we look at, we asked CIOs in the 2019 or so, late 2019, what were their top priorities, right? You see digital transforming business, a huge area. Cloud computing was their second priority. And then third is this whole area of infrastructure transformation. If you look at it, if you want to digitally transform your business, you need cloud computing. And really, to enable cloud computing, you need infrastructure. So they're all pretty much somewhat related and very high, on the list of CIO priorities prior to the last couple months, right? The last couple months hit, and these things have become, accelerated in terms of their priorities. And you see market disruption, right? You see retailers, right, that are now having to change their business model. You're seeing people working remotely and all the security and collaboration that needs to happen to enable that. You're seeing companies that had revenue run rates of, $50 billion and lots of data centers and revenue run rates going down to 5 billion, and trying to search for how do they become more agile in this environment, and a lot of market disruption that's occurring. And I'd say, don't take my words for it. You can take the words of the CEO of Microsoft, a great HITEC partner, by the way, for those from Microsoft who are on. But he's basically saying in the last, we saw 2 years of digital transformation, right, in the last 2 months or so. And it's true, and that companies have had to adapt and really move on a needle for this new norm. So as it relates to cloud, right, there's a lot of enabling technologies that are making it happen, and I wanted to touch on those. And there's really, just calling it 4 forces right now that are shaping this transformation. The first one is around, cloud investment. So, where Wayne Gretzky will follow the puck to where it's going, or where it's going to be. This is also around following the money, right? And where's the money going? And if we know where the money is going, then that's where the activity is going. 5G, and really transformational there. We'll talk a little bit about that. Edge and IoT. I've been talking a lot about IoT for the last 5 or 6 years with Ileana Rivera, HITEC member from Cisco, and Guillermo in that space. And this was like 5 years ago. We all thought it was going to be big. It's even bigger than that. And now there's this whole thing around edge, which is just, it's amazing as I learn more. And then data gravity and all these things, all these 4 things kind of build on each other. But, I think it's important that as leaders, we know, where the money is going, what are the big technologies, where they're going to be 5 years from now. So we're positioning ourselves and our skill sets and the value in helping lead our organizations and our clients, depending on what business you're in, to take advantage of these and win this environment and any environment that hits. So let's talk about cloud investment. This is for anybody who loves strategy and business strategy. I find it fascinating. Here you'll see just per month the amount of money that these just three cloud providers. I know there's many others out there, but these three are putting out there, $2 billion a month per month to try to win, to try to create new services, new capabilities. Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, just the amount of investment that's going. And then this is this is only three. There's other companies that are out there that are also putting tons of money, into the cloud, into investment. So it's important that we see that, we notice that. But I think the other side point is, for us, for folks, to look at data center environments and think that we can, traditional businesses with traditional data centers can compete with this ongoing spend of money, that the capabilities and the security and all that they're putting into this, it's going to be very challenging, and you're going to see more acceleration to the cloud. 5G. The more I learn, the more I've learned and continue to learn about 5G, I find it's going to be transformational. Transformational in that it's going to give us 100 times more bandwidth than current, 4G and LTE. And I've worked at Verizon prior to Accenture, so I'm very familiar with the telco space. But not only the 100 times bandwidth, but what it's going to enable in terms of autonomous vehicles, drones, robots, all these different Internet of Things devices that are out there. And you see, the amount of connections, the amount of money, again, following the money, the amount of money that's going to be spent here. And how the other thing that I've seen is in how this transforms the way we configure our corporate networks and a technology that enables us to look at our corporate networks. So 5G. Edge computing and IoT. So the IoT, for those who may not know, is Internet of Things. So it's all these different devices and things that are connected to the internet, sensors, robots, drones, cars, all these different things are going to be connected to the internet. We're saying by 2025, 75 billion devices, and again, up to 15 trillion with a T. Right, that's going to be invested in here, right? So watching where the money is going, we all should be asking ourselves, how are we positioning our skills? How are we positioning our leadership? How are we positioning our networks to take advantage of what's going to be happening here and helping our companies succeed, in this environment? And then the edge, and this is an interesting one. So you've got all these different things that are connected to the internet, and autonomous cars, jets, boats, drones, robots, all these things. And they're saying 75% of enterprise data will be processed at the edge by 2025, which I questioned when I first heard the data. So I reached out to Jorge Lopez, who's at Gartner, and spoke at a couple different HITEC events. I think at one time was a HITEC 100 recipient and a friend of mine for many years. I said, Jorge, this doesn't sound right. Right now, I'd say 80% or so of enterprise data right now sits in data centers that are managed by corporations. And we're spending the next, with all the investment you've seen, we're spending the next couple years moving all the stuff to the cloud. And what Jorge said, so I go, but it's going to be weird that by only 5 years from now that you're going to have 75% of the data is going to be processed outside either of these different areas. And he said, with the massive amount of devices that are going to be connected externally and the accelerating amount of processing power, you look at like autonomous vehicles and jets and cruise lines and all these different, and robots and all these different things that are going to be connected, and the amount of compute and items are going to process, that's what's going to get you to the 75% of data being processed at the edge. So for me, it was very, just a transformational, insightful thing that I've learned. And again, it just goes to, okay, if that's 2025, how do we positioning, how we talk about cloud, how we talk about technology, how do we know if that's the world that that's going to be operating and data is going to be processed there? How do we best position, ourselves, our companies, for success in that environment. And then you look at the amount of data that's, so now you think about how all these things build on each other, right? You've got all this investment, Internet of Things, things at the edge, the increasing amount of devices, everything creating all this data. There's this competitive threats that are out there. So in order to compete with your competition, depending upon what industry you're in, you need more data. This creates this massive creation, of data and where it moves and how it moves and how do we manage it. So, for those on the call, it's how do we look at data and make sure that we're managing it correctly, that it's secured in the right ways, that it's giving us, we're processing it with artificial intelligence to drive innovation and insights that help us better compete and better position us for success. And then you're gonna see it, these enterprise data centers, if they're getting shut down, and you're going to see, again, most of the data is going to be processed outside of the data centers, in clouds and at the edge, by 2025, so 90%. So again, making sure we're positioned well for that. And then the last slide here, before I talk about just leadership, leadership principles in this age is, it's now, what's happened over the last couple of months is, how are we looking at the employee experience, right? And how are we making sure that we're enabled digitally, that we've got the right elements of diversity inclusion, even when we look at how we're connecting out with teams, the meetings we structure, how we're doing this securely, we're all working remotely. How are we making sure that the things that we can access improve the employee experience? And we see a lot of statistics here about workplace services and the growth in that market. There's also data points that, as you invest more in an employee experience and workplace experience, leveraging technologies like Teams and Zoom and others that are out there, right, you get a good return on innovation, customer stat, profitability, et cetera there. And if you look at, Accenture, we've been doing this a long time, 500,000 employees, very remote, very digital, operating at, using these technologies at scale. My last slide here, and then I'll open it up for questions, is around just leadership principles that I believe stand the test of time. And these are my personal ones, and hopefully some of these you might be able to take with yourselves. This is a summary of a 30-minute presentation I gave at the Silicon Valley Latino Leadership Summit that was put on by Frank Carbajal. He does it every year. I think he's doing it later this year and remotely. I'd encourage you to attend that one. It's a really good annual event. But me personally, I'm to maybe a fault, I'm always an optimist, and I look at the positive side of every situation and try to make the best of every situation. And so when I look at, over the last couple months, right, so the first principle I have is just keeping my family strong, keeping the foundation of family strong, because if that's strong, then it gives you if it's a foundation, you can do a lot of great things. If it's weak and there's issues, it makes it hard to do anything else. And in this period, I've been doubling down on that. I've had more family dinners in a row than I can ever remember, which has been excellent. Leveraging and building in the network, right? This is an example for those on the call. This is great. This is how we build the network and keep that going. And we need to continue to build it and elevate it. I've used this time, I've read 3 or 4 different books already. I've been watching some interesting things on history and History Channel, but I'm addicted to learning, and I want to continue to learn. I've been using a lot of this time to continue to accelerate, read, and do things that normally I couldn't do. I'm a big proponent of spirituality and leveraging the spirituality and reflecting, right? And these times, I think, are just a good time to step back and really reflect and think about our purpose. And so I think it's a great leadership principle for me. I think there's this element of goals, right? And I think, regardless of the environment, right, the goals stay the same. I think we should always continue to being setting big, powerful goals and going after them and achieving them. And then there's this Japanese model, and this is the picture here to the left, and it's called the Kagi, right? And it's an area that I think the other 4 other 5 or so leadership principles build upon. But, you know, there's about how we should focus our lives and our career. And it's around, you know, doing what you love, doing what the world needs, doing what you can get paid for and make a living on, and doing what you're good at. And, you know, you could think about any of those in isolation, but what the Academy, this model says is really, it's about deep focus, because these things change over time, but always trying to position yourself at the center of this, right? And really reflecting, and it comes with all these 5 leadership principles above it, but really reflecting and digging deep. And this is something that, you know, comes through reflection, practice, studying, reading, research, and it's a model that I would encourage you to use. Those are, you know, so in summary, right, this environment has caused a greater need for digital transformation and disruption, with cloud being the major enabler. You saw all the money, you know, that's going there. There's several very disruptive technologies that are going to enable that we need to position ourselves for, to really help our companies lead in this environment, help our companies transform and change in this environment. And then last is, you know, that we're going to see, you know, there's going to be hornets, there's going to be, you know, snowstorms, hurricanes, all kinds of things that are going to hit us, you know, over time, right? And I think, you know, our leadership principles, our leadership values need to be strong, and we need to continue to lead in this environment. So I want to thank everyone for you know, taking, you know, some time out of your schedule on a Friday to listen to these thoughts. Hopefully they've given you a couple different insights that you can take with you and lead upon. And I look forward to answering your questions. So thank you.
Hey, David, how are you? It's Artemio.
Hey, Artemio, how are you
How's
doing?
it going? Good, and you?
It's going great. It's going great.
Good.
Great.
Hey, yeah,
you.
great presentation. I appreciate you also, you know, taking the time, you know, to walk us through, you know, these details. I'm just curious to get your perspective about cybersecurity around some of these, you know, the more data you put out there, how you balance that with, you know, security and ensuring that, you know, data privacy and all those concerns are properly addressed.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's interesting, you know, if you look 3 to 4 or 5 years and beyond that, you know, that was always a big consideration about the cloud, right? And that, you know, I don't trust my data out there. You know, it's how do I know it's going to be secure? And really, over the last year, a couple years or so, it's been, you know, that all this investment, right, that these cloud providers and others are putting in the respective clouds, they're a heck of a lot more secure, because they can keep up with all the threat analytics, the AI, and everything that they can do, you know, to ensure security. There's also multi-levels of security as well, right? So it's you know, a lot of times when you see with breaches, regardless of how secure the you know, either the cloud or the infrastructure is, it always ends up on people, right? People doing, you know, just sometimes forgetting things or not doing things the right way, or leaving passwords exposed, or phishing, or all these different kind of things, right? So there's an element of that. But the other interesting part of that question, though, is kind of now in this 2025 world that I kind of talked about. It's going to get even more interesting, because now you've got a lot of data that's even more distributed, and it's growing exponentially, and it's on all these different devices and drones and chips and so security is going to continue to increase in the amount of, call it investment, amount of attention, amount of breaches, amount of hackers, so it is an area that, you know, 1, we need to pay attention to. 2, it's only increasing. And 3, from everybody on the call, we should always be considering it, and even thinking about how do we, you know, get ahead of it and position our companies for success there. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, that was great.
Hey, David. It's Delia here.
Hey, Hey,
Now,
Delia, how are you?
Hermano, you live 30 miles from me. And you and Daryl, I have yet to see, but I'm glad to see that you're safe and healthy, and wonderful presentation, which actually I took lots of notes on. So if you saw me doing this, that was that. Especially with the 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. I had to like go on the side and look up quintillion. IT or not, I still had to look up how big that was. But where I'm going with this, you know, two things that really brought up to me in your presentation. One was, you talked about 80% of data centers going away. And my heart just went like, because most organizations, while they want that virtual transformation, right? They want the digital technology to take them to the next level, et cetera, et cetera. I equate this to having a landline, all right? You always want to have something that in case of emergency, you can break glass and have your ability to touch or get situationally right-sized and get moving. So you're 80% of data centers, and I know we've got a great alternative. This cloud transformation, virtualization is the way to go. But organizations, do you find that organizations struggle with literally getting rid of a data center? So that's my first question. And then on to that,
yep.
see where I'm going, because there's a great argument
Yeah.
to be made for a modified data center footprint. Just give me that for a second.
Right.
Especially in the healthcare industry, where you have HIPAA coming into play, you have data sensitivity, you have all of these things, and at the end of the day, everybody wants to be able to have that fail safe as much as they can. So data centers, 80%, while I don't, you know, if that's the way the world and this trend is going and we're moving to the virtualization, cool, everybody's fluid, we're in a changing environment, we're gonna go with it. But how are organizations really dealing with that mindset? Do you find that there's a hybrid approach that they're typically taking, or are they all in?
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, industries, it's such a broad generalization. Some industries are going to be a little bit slower and different. You know, hospitals with HIPAA might be a little bit slower, right, than retailers, right? But the one scenario that, and you know, that I would mention is like a company, right, that, you know, the last 2 or 3 years they went out and they invested in data centers, right? Let's say their business was at $50 billion. Mm-hmm. This environment hits 2 months ago, and their run rate goes from 50 billion down to 5 billion.
Right.
And their board of directors is saying, how do we rapidly slash costs? How do we? Mm-hmm. And you've got this element of, you know, you can't, because you've got all these kind of fixed CapEx costs out there, right? Where, you know, not that it's 100% foolproof, but in a cloud environment, you're able to kind of ratchet up and scale down a lot easier. The only other thing I would add is that a lot of these cloud vendors, the ones that are investing all these $2 billion, they're making it very enticing for companies to move rapidly. So sometimes they're either buying their data centers, or they're coming up with different incentives to get them to move quicker. So because they're fighting these cloud wars, right? And they want to win. So it's very aggressive in how they're competing there. So hopefully that answers your question there, Delia. Great to hear your voice.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. The second thing that I was parlaying it through, when we talk about the creative ways, which is exactly what you're segueing into, is, you know, organizations are looking at creative ways, right, to reduce costs, keep optimal efficiency, and keep the ball rolling, right? But outside of like teams and all of that, what are some of the creative ways you see that organizations are also exploring additional digital technologies?
So if I understand, like different digital technologies and how we're using them, or like collaboration technologies, just so I'm clear.
In both ways, you know, really, what ways do you see organizations are saying, okay, we've got to rethink this, right? What what are you seeing out there are possible trends to expand and utilize the way that organizations are using their digital technologies? I mean, actually, we kind of just talked about one, which is looking at the data center footprint and creative there.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of different things, right? So, you know, business models are now changing and adapting, right? And everything from, you know, online ordering and remote pickups and all these kind of things, right? But, you know, the interesting thing that we're seeing is now this whole area of chatbots, right? And how that's, you know, that's kind of caused a spike in things. If you think about unemployment insurance, right? For, you know, it's unfortunate, right? But there's been a spike in calls to various state and local governments around unemployment insurance. And these call centers, right, they're not traditionally able to handle, you know, the current load on a normal, you know, business, let alone this rapid spike that we have. So, those who answer the calls are answering pretty much the same questions all the time. You know, when am I getting the check? What's the status? You know, stuff that can be really handled by AI and chatbots. So you're seeing a lot of that, and a lot of those technologies can be rapidly deployed. So you're seeing a lot of that getting deployed as just a couple examples. So
maybe today, why? I know,
hey,
but
Vicky,
I think
Yeah. Hi, David. Jason Rueda, how are you?
Hey, Jason, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How about you?
Quite well, thank you. Thank you for your time and for the presentation. And just on a completely separate topic, I'm part of the EEP program, just as an introduction. So my question is that with regards to the current state of the environment, nobody could have predicted where we currently are with regards to the pandemic and such. And as everybody's moving towards the cloud, I guess my concern would be that everyone's going to ramp up their cloud presence. And at what point do you think there's going to be saturation or capacity concerns towards the cloud environments? Because at some point, they're going to hit a threshold or hit a wall. And I mean, if you take Zoom, for example, Zoom was a small company competing with a number of other large players in an organization or in the video conferencing world. And then because of the fact that they were cloud, they were able to scale up very quickly and became the go-to video conferencing for pretty much everyone. At what point does that hit a threshold where the providers are saturated and can't hit a further capacity, or at least need a bit of time to catch up to the demand?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I personally don't think they're going to run out of capacity. I think they've got enough money. They are, you know, they can project, right? They get a lot of these same projections that I get. So they have a good sense of where things are going in general. And you have different spikes and, you know, that, you know, they can, for the most part, handle. So I don't see them running out of capacity. I think between their relationships with the hardware providers that they get their hardware from, continuous advances in technology, and then, as kind of mentioned earlier, you know, then if it would ever happen, which I don't think, you know, you still have computing going out to the edge and all these different, you know, devices. So I don't see that, and I just see further. And by the way, you know, remember they are in a brutal battle for cloud market shares, right? So they don't want to lose that. And if any of them were to ever come to a point where they couldn't serve the capacity of one, it would be a severe damage to them in the battles that they're having, right? So yeah. I just don't see that. It could be, you know, you never know, right? But
my concern is that the duration that it takes to acquire new hardware, and because of everyone's asking for hardware, everybody has data centers currently, and even if they get to the state where they're getting rid of the data centers, they still have to get to that state. So they have to take care of current to get to that point. And that means that they're going to require hardware. They have long-lasting customer base and such, or relationships with these hardware vendors. And so at that point, it becomes a kind of a pull from many directions to continuously gain capacity to absorb that onslaught that was coming on from the pandemic or from people making that switch. So it becomes a bit worrisome for me, if that makes sense, or at least something to think about.
Yep. Thanks, Jason. And proud of what the EEP program has done too. Just a great program. So it's great to hear that you're part of that. Any other questions?
Yes, this is Heidi. I'm also part of the EEP program. I was wondering about mobility once, these companies, a lot of enterprises you mentioned are moving to the cloud. And it's hard to choose between what cloud, you're looking at, what serves you best at this point in time, which could change over the next few years. From a mobility perspective, has there been any discussion or anything that arises? How mobile is it once they're up in a cloud?
Yeah, there is, and there's technologies like containers and other things that you can kind of abstract and architect different applications so that they can easily be moved from one cloud to the other. But, I think the interesting thing will be once you're in one cloud and you start taking advantages of all these different services that they offer, and then they're going to offer services like, artificial intelligence and, some of this natural language processing and different services that they offer. You get more intertwined with them. It gets harder to move. So it's kind of a trade-off. It's like through my career, I've been through lots of architectural trade-offs, mainframe and client server and web. And now we're kind of here to this point where, you make trade-offs between, flexibility and capability, right? And I think those are, will be continued architectural decisions that organizations need to make as they think about how ingrained and how they architect their applications to take advantage of the cloud. But for those who are kind of in this space, I think it's, understanding what are those principles, all the different trade-offs that there are, and then being able to guide our companies and how we make decisions. And I guess my last point is it's changing all the, technologies are changing all the time, capabilities, offerings are changing. I mean, it's rapidly changing. So the other thing is always, to keep up with it as well. Thanks for the question there, Heidi.
Hey, David.
How are you? This is Sam Chapper. I'm also an EP alumnus, so we are representing. Thank you for the presentation. And I just had a very quick comment. I think this is an amazing time to be living in because, of course, every stage in computing has been great, but I believe that nowadays we finally have the computing power and the storage capacity to be able to enable things that have been existing for the last 40 years, like artificial intelligence. Like it's not a lab rat anymore. It's open center. So that's something that I'm loving. But my question, and I guess I'm one of those data center people. So thank you to the ones that went before me. I see cloud as two things. The first one is moving to operational expenses as opposed to CapEx. And that's great. But the other one is pretty much outsourcing data centers, right? Which is what a cloud is. So I had two questions for you. The first one is, because I work for a cloud provider, so I'm interested on the other side of the equation. How do you convince a large corporation with a lot of confidential data to trust outsourcing not only their information, but also the data center? Like, what's the selling point for them? And the other question that I had is, do you think there could be a point in time in which this trend changes and something happens that makes people wonder, wow, what did I take my information and data centers out of my jurisdiction? Should I bring them back, even if it has, costs adding to them? So I was just interested in those two aspects.
Yeah, so those are good. Good questions. So the first one is like, how do you what are the convincing factors to get somebody to move out of their data center into the cloud? I think there's a couple. One is costs, and cost is not a major. Some people it is a major one. Some people it's not. Sometimes it's neutral, but in general, you'll see cost be a play in the flexibility of cost. Companies like that, and the example I use, they would like it even more now, and it's becoming more appealing to boards and CEOs that they can get more variable costs when they need it. So that's a big one. The second is just the agility and the amount of what you can process and what you can do and how you can scale up, and leveraging all this ocean of services that they're creating, the billions of dollars that they're investing, right? It's really hard to do it when you're in a data center versus in the cloud. Which leads to the third area is competitive disruption. I think everybody's looking at their business, and if you guys have been reading the newspapers over the last, couple days, even, there's been a lot of companies who were struggling several months ago are now, they're filing for bankruptcy, right? So I think companies are looking at that and saying, I need to be digital, I need to be agile. What's the enabler to get there? And that's cloud. So those, I think, are three key ones. And if you guys remember my statement from the last time I led it, I think it was in San Francisco, I said, if your business is not in the cloud, it will be in the ground. And I further stand by that. And I think, we've seen some evidence of that happen. And then your second question was around, do you see it coming back? But yeah, that was an interesting one. You can never say never. I don't think so. I think it's likely we'll not go back to enterprise data centers. It will go to the edge, as mentioned. So I don't see that, but you can never say never. But I think that train has left the station, and I think it's going that way. It'll be different moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
This is Sophia from EP as well. I was wondering, since you are a co-founder of HITEC, how do you feel about HITEC and how HITEC is going virtual?
It's a great question. We all look at our lives and things that we've done, and this is one of I call it the highlights of my life, right? And my co-founders and everybody who's just been along for the journey and watching the membership have grown over the years, it's been a highlight of my life, and the careers that we've impacted, seeing so many different people rise from director to vice president to CIO to boards to multiple boards to different areas of impact and influence that we've had across different industries. It's been an amazing ride. I've had the opportunity to open up the NASDAQ as part of this, and it's been great. And then so where it's at and where it's going, we got a tremendous board, we've got a tremendous leadership team, we got a tremendous leader in Omar. The sky is the limit, and I think we continue to help support and help grow this group of leaders that are part of HITEC, and what we're doing with the foundation and the great work the team of the foundation is doing, helping with the education in the pipeline, and really building great technology and business leaders that are shaping industries who just happen to be Hispanic. Is phenomenal. It's something I'm proud of, and it's definitely one of the highlights of my life. So thank you for asking the question.
Thank you for the answer.
Are there any more questions?
Yes, this is Herman. I have a question. How's it going, David?
Herman, it's great. So great to hear your voice. It's been a wonderful, man, it's been a while, but it's great to hear your voice, my friend.
Good to see you and to hear from you. Wanted to follow up on Jason's question about infrastructure and where we're at, specifically about 5G. I've been hearing about 5G for about 3 years, and we're still not at a nationwide rollout. What have been some of the obstacles to getting 5G up and running, and when do you see that nationwide rollout for 5G taking place?
Yeah, well, you're starting to see it in pockets, right? It's level of investment. It's kind of a little bit of the chicken and egg thing, right? Because I think for those to use it in general, right, you got to have the enabled phones. So companies are being strategic in how they use their investments and kind of roll it out. So you're seeing different cities and patching, and then you're going to see this kind of acceleration to 2025, and then as and then company, and it's kind of the chicken and the egg thing too, is more of it gets rolled out, there's going to be more applications that are using it, which will incent companies to invest more and roll it out more. But that's my take on the rollout of 5G. But it's coming, right? And I think we all need to get ready for it and how we can use it to help position our companies and ourselves for success.
Hey, this is Luis Rosado. I was at the EEP program last year with KPMG. Quick question, what are your thoughts on the space for managed service providers to fit in between, let's say, the corporation and Azure as a outsourced data center?
Yeah, I think there's going to continue to be a growing need for those, and then the tools and the capabilities, to help companies manage this stuff, because it's like you have your footprint, you got to migrate to the cloud, and once it's in the cloud, you got to manage it, but you got to do it in a very efficient way. So there will be a growing amount of services and managed services to help companies, navigate, optimize, better use. Now you're in this sea of all this investment and opportunity. How do you leverage it strategically to win? And that's going to be a continued area for managed services providers to help companies, and companies themselves, right? So they're in partnership to do that. So, but just immense opportunities. There's not, it'd be interesting to poll other HITEC members, but I'm just, we've been through different technology changes, and this one is it's just amazing the amount of opportunity and change that's coming. So managed service providers have a great play in that moving forward. So, but thanks for being part of the EEP too.
Are there any additional questions before we wrap it up?
Yeah, hi, this is Jose Milanes. I love the presentation and all the information. It's very powerful. I would like to have your point of view on a lot of the information that you have here. Most likely it's coming from statistics and analysis done on I will use riches for the lack of a better word, or the more developed countries in the world. So do you think cloud is going to close the gap between economies at the country level, or is it going to be the opposite? Is it going to even make the gap bigger because of lack of infrastructure guidance, the right political environment to move government information to the cloud for some countries? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend country by countries, and development countries it's going to be interesting. I think developing countries, in 5 years, I think you'll see more stuff processed at the edge. They might skip the whole, cloud thing, and 5G will be cheap. So, smart devices will be cheap. Devices connected will be cheap. So, I think some developed countries will go there. There might be a period where they're able to easily move stuff to the cloud. Again, it's going to be more secure. So as countries and developing countries, if you're running any kind of business, storing any kind of data, you're going to always have to be worried about hackers. And hackers are going to, they become very ripe targets, right? So, cloud is going to be can help these emerging economies, emerging companies, emerging economies, better secure and help them better compete. So I think it's going to be, you're going to have a little bit of both, right? You're going to have some moving the cloud for those reasons. Even the laggards, I think, will then, can potentially, move compute out to the edge when that happens as well. So hopefully that helps answer the question there.
Hey, David, it's Myrna. How are you?
Hey, Myrna, I'm doing great. It's great to hear your voice.
I wanted to thank you.
I don't get to see the videos too, by the way, because I got this thing going on. But
bummer.
Great to hear your voice.
But I wanted to thank you for your continued leadership at HITEC and offering this content to the community that gathered here today. And by far mentioning how moving to the cloud is actually inherently much more secure than a lot of folks tend to believe. And then I have a really technical question for you. How can I get that high-tech background?
So it's pretty interesting. You just need to go find the logo. You could snip it or whatever, and then you save the logo, and then you know, I think there's this feature, or maybe you know how to. I don't know if it's a joke or not, but
no, it was a joke. It was a joke. I have a couple of backgrounds on the boat and a couple of backgrounds at the beach. But now that I see you in front of the HITEC one, it's awesome. It's awesome to see that brand prominently displayed along with the greater than sign.
Yeah, yes, it is. Thank you. And yeah, I got the HITEC shirt on as well, the little logos as well. So it's a HITEC Friday, you know. So for everyone, you know, grab a drink tonight and let's celebrate HITEC and all the great things that we've done and we're doing. And it's just let's, you know, keep positive and optimistic, and let's keep cranking, keep making things happen, as so many on this call are doing. So.
I love it. I love it, David. Myrna, good to see you. I can't think of a better note than to sort of wrap this up on. David, again, thank you for your continued leadership. Thank you for the incredible presentation today. But I think more than the presentation, just this back and forth and the ability to have this dialogue with members of the HITEC community, which I think is so important that we continue to do this and support each other and challenge each other and question each other. So David, thank you for your leadership today and over the last several decades in helping create and build this amazing community that is HITEC. I want to take a quick moment and remind everybody that we're going to continue to do these webinars. We look forward to having you join us next week, Friday. We have at 2 p.m. Eastern, we have Salina Rivera, our very own, presenting the Digital U. This is a presentation that we've done now a couple of times at our HITEC summits, and it was part of this last EEP virtual session that we did in early April. And it's something that we always get requests for, and so we want to make sure that we are making this content available to the broader HITEC community. We live in a digital world, as we all know, and our digital identities are so key and so important. So Sabina, next Friday, will be sharing her knowledge and expertise on behalf of the HITEC community. And then also we've been doing these sessions on Wednesdays because we recognize that, yes, we are all leaders, we are all in technology, but we are all finding ourselves navigating through these difficult times. And in many ways, you know, there's this renewed focus on our well-being, our wellness, our health, not just our physical health, but our mental health. And so we launched Wellness Wednesdays several weeks ago, and we invite you to join us also at 2 p.m. Eastern next week, where we have Cassie Solberton, who's going to be talking about how to bring health into your body, how to create that balance. So we hope that you all will join us there. And then I know that Sophia mentioned us moving virtual, and hopefully by now you've all received the news that we're going to be hosting our summer summit entirely virtual. We will not be hosting an in-person summer summit at Capital One as initially planned. We do look forward to the day where we're all able to get together again physically. Unfortunately, we just don't necessarily think that we're going to be there by August, but we're really excited about the work that we're putting together for our very first full virtual summit. We're going to be communicating with all of our corporate partners to let you know how you can register, how you can access the virtual summit. We're trying to create something that is very exclusive for the HITEC community, and we're really excited about some of the speakers and presentations that we're beginning to build out. And so stay tuned for additional information on the agenda and on how you can register and participate in the virtual summit. But with that, I'll echo David's sentiment that you know, we should all celebrate the amazing work and community that is HITEC. So I will be raising a glass to you, David, and to the entire HITEC community. I wish you guys all health and happiness and a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you here next week. So with that, thank you very, very much for participating.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
You too.